Everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, your weekly dose of insider DevOps trends, AWS news, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community. Plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's January 15th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator that's focused on AWS infrastructure and helping teams deploy their software faster. And we do this by leveraging our over 200 Terraform modules that have been battle tested and downloaded over 100 million times. So if you or your team has been banging your head against the wall with Terraform, just head over to cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet. Answer a few quick questions, and you'll book a meeting with me directly. So how can you maximize today's session? Well, first off, the format's very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions. And if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos or any of our modules, go for it. This is a great place to ask. And for those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. Join us by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, please share it with your team. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse in a few hours, where you'll find a recording of today's session posted. So with that said, let's see what news and announcements we have. First one, Nixos has been a popular topic on office hours in the past. There was a post trending this past week on Hacker News from a fellow DevOps engineer, kind of on his experience and summarized by a death by 1,000 cuts. So the post is overall positive, actually, in the things that he does like about Nix, but just that it's not for the faint of heart. And how, if you're going to try and debug things, you're only going to go so far by asking the community. You'll probably need to dive into some of the code just to understand how it works. So here's, there's a lot of very positive posts on Nix, and here's one that's, maybe a little bit directed the other way. This, I believe he's been running Nixos for about 2 years on the desktop. Next announcement is for anyone using OpenTofu. This might be pretty exciting. 1.9.0 is now available, and that is the release, of course, that introduces for each on providers. Now, there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't be doing for each on providers, but if you ever wanted to, now you can. We've talked a fair bit about this in the past, about the provider for each. Also, interesting stat, apparently the registry traffic has grown by 300%. So they're transferring up to 140 gigs a day of Terraform code. That's quite a lot. And obviously that's graciously provided by Cloudflare, which has extended free bandwidth to the OpenTofu project. I forget what they call their initiative supporting open source projects. And they've added search. So yeah, check out that announcement. And the last one was just one that Michael shared in the Terraform channel. If you're interested in any of the HashiTalks, this is a virtual conference sponsored by HashiCorp. That the tracks have been announced, and they're coming here in February, I suppose. That's it. That's it. That's all I got. Any other interesting things this past week? Rishav, I see you joined. What's the latest on your GitHub actions? Were you working on those, or?
Hello, hello. Hi, yes, I'm surprised you've remembered. Yeah, nothing too huge updates, but yeah, of all things, somehow our Lord and Savior Anton, he picked it out from obscurity and he featured it in his weekly TF. Yeah, just
Oh,
last
no
week.
way.
I had no idea. Yeah. And it's one of those weird feelings. Like, first of all, how do you even find it? It's not that, it's pretty niche. Even people who use it don't really know much about it. But no, anyhow, I've been genuinely surprised that people have been using it and Anton's featured it. So, chuffed for the time being. But at the same time, I'm also realizing there's only so far you can go. It's not that crazy. It's just a few hundred lines of bash code, running plan, init, workspace. That's all it is, right? It's nothing world changing. Anyone can do it.
Yeah, it's funny because in Anton's Babenko's newsletter, I feel like once a week there is an announcement of another GitHub action for Terraform. I didn't realize. No, I stopped. I confess, I saw probably the announcement, but I didn't bother clicking on it because
You're all good. You're all
the
good. If nothing else, I will say one of the things that I've seen a bit of a positive trend towards is this is just maybe personal anecdotal experience, but a lot of people often reach to TerraGrunt and TerraMate very quickly whenever their project complexity increases by any degree, which is fair enough. If it meets your needs, if it fits what you're looking for, that's great. I'm always been a bit apprehensive of adding yet another proprietary layer on top of whatever you have just to make your life easier. And I think that's one of the nicer things of the last few months, if not years. Both Terraform and OpenTofu are, in many ways, just adopting features in TerraGrunt as part of their original offering. Of course, OpenTofu is going above and beyond with the for each provider, for example. That's something you can do with TerraGrunt for a long time now, or passing variables into dependency versions. Another thing you could have done for ages. But now that it's kind of being adopted into somewhat mainstream binaries, love to
I
see
see what
that.
you mean. Yeah, those are good points. Those are two good points. But what I heard was that Terragrunt really did want a lot of these features in the core. They just faced an uphill battle to try and get them into the core. So they threw in the towel and just had introduced them in Terragrunt.
I could be wrong, but isn't one of the, if one or maybe more of the core developers behind OpenTofu supplied by TerraGrunt?
No, I think it's slightly different. Or I mean, maybe there's another one. But Marty Atkins is the one that comes to mind. He was a core developer of Terraform, and
Right,
he is now working full time on OpenTofu,
right.
Spacelift. So Spacelift is footing the bill for that and uh, contributing to that. Also,
Gotcha.
there's a new, I think there's somebody new who joined the OpenTofu project full time as well, but I forget who it is.
Yeah, I can't remember the name either. Although, since you'd mentioned the 1.9 release, one other thing. I know the for each of providers is the big announcement. There's another one which I feel is pretty worth mentioning. Do you know how there's a target flag you can pass in to target resources? OpenTofu shipped exclude as a flag. So you can now run the same plan, but the inverse. You can just choose to
Oh,
exclude maybe your
nice,
certificates.
nice, nice. That's cool. That's practical. Yeah.
It gets around having your old bash scripts doing a list of resources, negating everything you don't want, and then targeting those.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and yeah, it's an interesting one. I can't, I mean, there's in as far as I know, in our team's experience, it's extremely seldom ever to need to do it at all. And I think the problems are typically exacerbated when you have more of a teralith or a very, very large root module with
Mhm.
different pieces, perhaps cyclical dependencies, and then that comes to play.
It's never great whenever you run target, the console just yells at you, do not do this, do not do this.
Yeah, I did see somebody came out with a tool. I think we had announced it on office hours. It was a GUI for that. So you
Um,
could just pipe it into this GUI, and then you could very selectively target each resource you wanted to work with.
gotcha.
But I'd have to look it up if that were interesting.
I've been shouting out OpenTofu for a wee while, but to take off the rose-tinted glasses for a moment, one thing I have noticed is maybe it's because of the IBM acquisition, maybe they were just doing it anyway, but the Terraform projects really picked up the pace in contributing new features and bringing PMs in.
Yeah, yeah. It does feel a little bit like that. In the beginning, it was a little bit like I was wondering if this is just like, in any bad breakup, Goes out and dates a bunch of people just to show I'm fine, I'm totally okay, I got this. And that's kind of what it felt like. They were just like showing how the project is healthier than ever. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
kept at it at a pretty fast pace. And yeah, obviously, Tofu is a slight step behind, but also trying to find its own footing, which is interesting because I think it's important for OpenTofu to develop its own identity and features to differentiate itself from HashiCorp or BSL licensed Terraform.
And that's always going to be a tricky one, right? Because even if they want to go their own way, the general expectation of the audience is going to be maintaining compatibility with Terraform.
Yes, I think so for the foreseeable future, but at some point I think there'll be a rift, and you go one way or the another or another. We started we encountered our first gotcha. So one of the interesting things we're doing at Cloud Posse right now is if you go into github.com, Cloud Posse, Terraform components, we are implementing full automated tests for our components. And components for us are Terraform root modules, and they're provisioned via stacks. And here's an example of one. It's held up currently on an architectural decision we have made a decision on last week, but the code is here. And what we wanted to do with the testing was twofold. We wanted to embrace, as we have done, TerraTest, because TerraTest is the most mature and the most versatile of what you can do. But it alienates users, let's say that, right? Like if you're a Terraformer, you probably don't, if you're just coming at this from a sysadmin background or non-developer background, you probably will be intimidated by Go tests. So we acknowledge that. And in what we have here is conventional Go testing for one of these components. What we also wanted to do was to introduce Terraform support for like the native test framework in Terraform. And that's supported now in Tofu versions was a 1.7 and later, I believe, and newer versions of BSL licensed Terraform. But we had to put the brakes on it because it turns out that this is the first big rift, that the way the testing works between BSL Terraform and OpenTofu was apparently not the same. I say apparently, I wasn't the engineer, working on it. I haven't tested it out myself, but that made it tricky because we're not going to implement BSL tests and MPL tests in the same thing. So we haven't yet decided how to tackle that. Maybe that's the first thing I can turn around. Like, anybody have opinions on this?
Eric, do you remember what was different?
I don't. I was again,
Um,
since I wasn't the one working on it, this was the executive summary for me.
yeah, I'll say that I wanted to get into using the native testing framework recently. And we have a newer module around automating Spacelift that I'm pretty bullish on, but like one of the things that we didn't have was tests. So I used that module as an example for where to write tests. And I can either share some links or I can share my screen and show you like how we're testing.
Yeah, I would
But I'm
love to see
interested
that.
what the issue was.
But obviously, if there's some irony here, and don't get yourself in trouble,
Well,
one way or another.
no,
But
we're running Terraform test and Tofu test against the same set of tests, and they're both clean on every PR. So
but I thought you couldn't use BSL Terraform with Spacelift.
you cannot.
Okay.
But basically, I wanted to write a pipeline. Well, you can prior to 1.57, but
Yeah, but then there's no native test framework.
yeah. Regardless, basically, it's a use case that wouldn't come up where somebody would probably be using Terraform,
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
1.10
sorry, I
to
didn't mean to get you in
manage
trouble.
Spacelift. No, no, no. But it's interesting because here, do you want me to share screen?
Yeah. Let me
Okay.
I'll stop sharing for a second and allow. There you go.
Cool. Let's see. All right. We've got Terraform Spacelift automation. is the root module, or child module rather. And we have a bunch of tests in here that, do a number of assertions against, hey, make sure that these root modules get picked up and, they end up in certain locals. So we're testing that, hey, a local includes the correct Terraform workspace here. What we do on every PR is a TF test workflow that does an Aqua install. So we use Aqua to manage both Terraform and Tofu versions. But we have a matrix here that just runs init and then runs test against those two. And if we go and look at a recent PR, this was from my team member Yang, just adding something really small in terms of a new supported variable. And he didn't add tests as part of this. But if we go and look at the details, we have a Tofu test and a Terraform test. Both of these
and it's
run
the same
clean.
exact code.
Same exact code. Nothing gets really changed between the two. So,
all right. Well, I'm gonna have to let me check back next week and find out what that was.
And it might be something. What I could see it being a difference with is that I think that Tofu might be a little bit later to the mocks support for providers and things of that nature. So it's like, if you're trying to mock a provider or mock a module or like what a resource does, then those might have diverged, but we didn't get into that. At a base level, the native testing framework is the same across Tofu and Terraform, as far as I know.
All right. Well, that's good news. So I would really like that to be the outcome. In which case, I think we'll add that to our test helpers so that we can try and run that as well. So that's cool. Have you guys found a simpler way to manage Spacelift?
On native Terraform, I like our module just because it's for meeting people where they're at. We're just following existing directory structures. What we've seen is like the two patterns of like, hey, if you're using workspaces or you're using like single instance directory structure is what we ended up calling it, where, hey, you have a directory, a root module directory for each instance of code that you're trying to deploy. So you basically have a directory per state file. We kind of covered those two use cases where there's multi-instance and single instance, and then we go off your directory structure. So I think that we've used it well for a number of clients right now. It's managing Spacelift to me feels reasonable. I think it's still a big value add, but yeah, it depends on where clients are at, and we're trying to meet clients where they are rather than dictate too much. So yeah, it depends.
Well, that makes sense. What I really wish they would have done or would do at some point is support like just a YAML file with all your stacks and configuration. So it worked almost as simply as Atlantis, and that you don't have to terraform the thing that's doing your Terraform. Never liked that part.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm meeting with John Mark, their CPO, next week. I'll bring that up and add that to their like feature requests, because I agree it would be really nice to not have to deal with any of that. I don't know if it's something that it's on their mind
that describes your stacks and configuration. You're done with it. I think that's
exactly what we built this Terraform child module to do, is basically, hey, we'll read in this YAML file if it's at this path, and then you can configure things. But yeah, I like your idea too. I'll follow up if I get any traction on that one.
All right. Any other announcements or observations, talking points, questions, anything? Anyone?
A bit related to Cloud Posse and using Terraform to make Terraform. Just at the tail end of last year, I noticed Terraform the HashiCorp ones, they deployed a new feature to introduce S3 native state locking instead of
Yeah.
DynamoDB. And I know you guys have the TF state backend GitHub action with Cloud Posse. And I was curious, has there been any kind of interest in people wanting to use the S3 native version of state locking yet? Is that something you've looked into already?
Well, yes and no, but so we are predominantly focused on OpenTofu, and I don't believe there's a RFC for it or an issue for it. I don't believe it's made its way into the core of OpenTofu yet. So backends, as you know, are in the core of the runner, not in as a provider. So it has to always be done that way. So yeah, I would love nothing more than just to adopt right away. This is using the optimistic locking in S3, where you can now create like a lock file on there, and it's just leveraging that, because all the DynamoDB table was doing was serving as a glorified lock manager. So now that's no longer necessary. In BSL Terraform, you can just use that now. We haven't. I have to look to see, maybe somebody's contributed a PR for it already. I haven't taken a look at our module for that recently, but I am curious.
Gotcha. No, same here, because that's what we're keen to do as well. We're still on Terraform for some of our projects, and not having one DynamoDB dedicated for each project is a pretty big boon.
Yeah. Also, when we looked into doing, now this is interesting. I can't commit that this will be fixed with it. If I recall correctly, we were not able to implement automatic failover for Terraform state backends on S3 because the lock table in Dynamo referenced the region, and I think it had maybe the SHA was tied to that in some way. But what it meant was you couldn't just point your Terraform to another bucket in another region that was replicated, because the DynamoDB locks would be corrupted in some way.
Right.
So I wonder if with this change, it makes multi-region Terraform state easier. Anyone do you know, or has anyone looked into what that lock file contains? Is it just an empty file at this point, or?
I have a feeling it is just an empty file, but I'm not entirely sure just yet.
Yeah. It looks like we don't have that feature. 2 weeks ago, someone opened up a feature request for it. So yeah, hopefully, all of our modules are supported by community members. Matt Gowie, for example, here is a big supporter, or our customers that sponsor it. So if we have, if one of our customers is interested in the DynamoDB-less S3 based locking, that'd be something we're interested in implementing.
Sounds good.
It's interesting that, yeah, it would not be possible to do it in an OpenTofu way if there's an attribute like this.
I didn't realize, is that one of the kind of core tenets of Cloud Posse? Will have to maintain support for both of them for any new features,
It's
or at least at best effort.
it's a best effort, and it's a gray area or a murky area. The whole BSL license change and FAQ, and the legally binding FAQ puts everyone in a legally precarious position. There's like the Atlantis community, let's say. There's a post there saying, "Hey all, congratulations, we're free in the clear. HashiCorp says we have nothing to worry about." You're right. You have nothing to worry about because you're an open source project. Open source is not competing competitively against the Terraform product. Except if you are providing paid support on an open source product, you are now violating the BSL and the BSL FAQ, at least based on our non-legal expertise. So I don't know. I wish HashiCorp would clear the air, on this some more, but
I remember that was one of the weird knee-jerk reactions at the very beginning with the license change, where everyone assumed that everyone's liable for the license change. People who don't do anything with Terraform, apart from provisioning infra, suddenly was worried, oh wait, is HashiCorp going to take my code? And it's like, no, not really, unless you're selling it.
Yeah, and that was the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That was not, I mean, that's obviously not what they were targeting. But if you are a company helping companies automate Terraform, then yeah, you're in a legal gray area as it relates to DSL Terraform. And unless you reach out to them and ask for some, guidance, then you'll never know. And sorry, I was just trying to find the window I wanted to share. I couldn't find it. Too many windows. Let me just go back here and then it should be easier. Yeah. Yeah, any other OpenTofu questions or Terraform questions? Hey, Michael, I see you're on the line. Any updates with your, was it Terramade or Terraform or many open source projects?
Yeah, not too much. Haven't had too much of a chance recently to work on it. I've been wrapped up in some other things, but had some parsing errors when people use it at a large scale, right? We talked about how difficult it is when you have a lot of resources and a lot of variables. That dependency graph really grows. So how to convert that into Mermaid is a challenge, but yeah, kind of iteratively working on it, but I haven't had a chance as much as recently to dive into it.
Gotcha.
I did sit in on my first OpenTofu engineering sync. I think they do it actually, yeah, each Wednesday in the morning. Sat in on my first one. The community is just awesome over there. So really welcoming, really supportive, just kind of open about everything that they're working on. So it was really, really cool to see that.
That's exciting. Oh. I believe we're going to have some people on from OpenTofu on office hours, but we're still working out the details. There'll be more to follow. All right. Any other question? Let me see here. Something in the chat. I see maybe.
Out of curiosity, for people who use GitHub Actions or like Terraform in their CI, I assume everyone uses the setup Terraform GitHub action. Is that the kind of go-to de facto standard?
Well, if you look at what Matt Galley was doing, I think that's a better way of doing it, which is just using Aqua. So Aqua is a really awesome new package manager that has a YAML schema, works well with Dependabot, and can install basically any binary from any GitHub source. And it's a generic solution, therefore. So you don't have to use one of these specialized GitHub actions just to set up Terraform, for example.
Gotcha. And what was the name of that? Aqua.
Aqua, yeah, Aqua project. Let's see, I might have it in my history here. Aqua.
Because I've heard of TN and ASDF, but I'm not sure I've seen Aqua project.
Yeah, aquaproj/aqua aquaproj.github.io.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So, by the way, this guy is amazing. Who is behind it? Shinsuke. He has like 200 GitHub open source projects that he himself manages and has created, and they're well documented. So this is a cool one. I always wanted a general purpose package manager like this that wasn't tied to an OS and distribution. Now, it comes with some caveats. It only really does basic installs. I don't believe it supports hooks and post-install hooks, and it does everything of a conventional package manager. But it works well with a lot of the tooling, at least in our ecosystem. And we're actually, as part of Atmos, we're actually looking at how we can best integrate Aqua as well. So we have implementing Atmos packages, and we lay out a potential interface for extending Atmos to support packages as well. Because with your tool chain, if you're using workflows, if you're using custom commands in Atmos, it would be really awesome if it could just automatically install the dependencies of your custom commands and the dependencies of your workflows in and Aqua handles all the architectural, all the the machine architecture handling. So it will install the appropriate binary for your architecture. And that's why I think it would be really sweet to add Aqua into Atmos.
It'd be very slick.
Yeah.
Because the reason for bringing it up is just because with the setup Terraform GitHub Action, sure, it's great and it works well, but one of the annoyances is that effectively it's a Node.js wrapper around the binary. You don't actually use the binary directly. And that comes with caveats like you don't get the raw output from Terraform plan or Terraform apply. You get some extra debug statements mixed in, some of
It's
the unique.
annoying. Yeah, I encountered that as well when using it and gave up on it. So before Aqua, there's another GitHub action that we frequently use. I just forget what it's called, but it also does something similar to Aqua, where it just lets you install. All you do is you give it a GitHub repo and the version, and it'll find the package for your OS and release and install it, so that you can really just use that as a package manager itself. Also, it's really nice because it adds built-in GitHub Action caching, which makes it so much faster than using the HashiCorp one, at least at that time.
Right. Gotcha. Because I've never ran into any kind of rate limiting, but I always assume that if you're running some insane projects, you could potentially be rate limited from just downloading the same binary over and over again.
Yeah, it happens. And depending on where how that's working, it's bit our customers even. You have to and the benefit of using GitHub Actions to pull from GitHub and then using the GitHub token is you automatically then have a elevated rate limit to fetch against GitHub. But problems that we've seen is like, you scale out 200 parallel jobs on GitHub to run a Terraform plan in like every region and every component you have, and you hit rate limits from like if you're depending on Docker images from Docker Hub or anything like that.
Matt's linked something to do with OPA, and that's always one of those things which I've been super fascinated with.
Yeah.
Where I'd love to have open agent policies, but never found time to actually invest it.
Yeah, let me pull that up. I saw it was talked about. I forgot to talk about it here. You guys see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Matt, you want to talk about your OPA Rego test?
Yeah, sure. So team member on my team, Yang, basically came up with this idea, and it's pretty sweet just because it's, running Rego tests is not hard, but this gives you a GitHub action to consume that gives you coverage and make sure that you're, you don't need to reinvent the wheel and build your own Rego testing GitHub action. So yeah, basically you get, if you click on that example pull requests, you get coverage for all of your policies, details about what failed, and you kind of get a bunch of information. This GitHub action comment gets updated as you push new code, which is really nice. And then you it's a pretty simple GitHub action, but it's, pretty nice to have as just something you roll in and utilize. So we're using it with a couple clients, and we find it pretty handy.
Yeah.
That's all.
Very cool. Let's see, any other topics here? Someone did share the pull requests. Oh, that was the pull request for HashiCorp Terraform. And yeah, someone shared the open issue for, Rishav shared the open issue for the OpenTofu state locking. Any PRs linked to this? Doesn't appear so. This was a really cool little thing I like they did on OpenTofu, which was ranking. It's just a really simple inline action using action script to tally up the reactions on all the issues, making the reactions actually meaningful, because otherwise there's no way to actually aggregate that information. So I thought this was cool. And then I guess broken down by labels, top bugs, top RFCs, etc. So OCI registries, that looks like top of the list, and I know they're working on that, so that'll be cool. Interesting. This is number 12 on the list, adding workspace to support to the HTTP backend. But I know there's a contradictory proposal to deprecate workspaces altogether. So I guess 34 isn't that many uploads.
There was number 10, which was one I'd raised, which was supposed to be a simple one, right? If you're replacing everything Terraform with OpenTofu, you want to do the same for Dependabot. And then everything changed with the release of v1.8. Since now you can variabilize your module references, how do you Dependabot fix that? What if the module version is declared in a TFR file? What if it's made up of 3 different strings? How do you even accommodate something like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath on that. And with Dependabot being acquired by, well, I mean, this is way old news, obviously, but by GitHub, I wonder what the velocity is on the Dependabot product.
Yeah, I was actually looking this up, and for reference, I was looking at how Terraform's Dependabot config was set up, and I was surprised to find it was all community-driven, not GitHub employees, not HashiCorp employees, just people who were tired of not having Terraform updates, and they just did it themselves.
That's interesting. So I would expect to see something like this in RenovateBot before I'd see Dependabot. Yeah. Did you look into RenovateBot? I'm curious if it was
We did, yeah. There was a person here when I joined earlier on, Venkata, I think.
Oh, Venkat, yeah.
Yeah, it was just by pure coincidence. I think he was going on a Renovate project to over all his open source repos. And he was able to kind of let us know that, hey, if you use this config, it helps us a little bit to at least get an idea when there's an update. It might not be able to fix it.
It's worth noting, Rishav, that all I did was copy Cloud Posse's work. So, give credit where it's due. I definitely referenced a lot of the Cloud Posse repos on the configs and everything, and was able to port that over. So,
interesting. Yeah. Are you using variable references in your Terraform for sources?
I apologize. I wasn't fully following along.
Okay. Yeah, Rishav was just saying how, with the new versions of OpenTofu, you can actually have variables in your sources, module sources, including the version, therefore, and that breaks Dependabot, and that let's not hold our breath that Dependabot will fix that, but maybe there's a practical way of doing that with Renovate.
Yeah, so I haven't run into that issue yet, not leveraging that functionality in OpenTofu, but we are leveraging like regex expressions quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
leveraging the other pattern matching that RenovateBot offers, you could probably get around it. But
Yeah.
I imagine RenovateBot is going to lag a little before they add it, especially if that feature just came out. It might
Yeah.
like.
But I bet
There's
it could be
yeah.
pretty easy if you're using a var file for it, because you can just have the magic comments in the regex manager of Renovate to update those versions then. And Sergey points out that he's not sure if it's relevant to Aqua, but it's Comtrya.dev. I've never heard of that. Let's see here. What is that? Try.dev. When it's built in Rust, it allows you as the user to provision your systems through the use of simple configuration files. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, so this would be similar but different to Aqua. This sounds like it's more focused on general configuration, of which maybe package management is one of them. Let's see what else is in the chat here. Looks like it. Hey, Michael Jenkins, any interesting topics? You always have something.
Yeah, nothing interesting from, well, you know what? I take that back. I am
See?
not I'm not promoting myself here. I actually started a very low-key impromptu podcast type of thing
Oh,
with
cool.
a woman named Angela Andrews. You might know her if you're a podcast aficionado from the Compiler podcast, sponsored by Red Hat. And we started a book club podcast where we are reviewing books. We're starting with the DevOps Handbook by Gene Kim, Jez Humble, and a whole bunch of other folks. And we literally just started yesterday. I'll find the link and post it here. But
That's cool.
yeah, we literally just started.
Yeah,
We're gonna
sure.
go over a few weeks reading this book, and then we'll pick up another one and hopefully keep the thing going. But yeah, if you're inclined to give a follow or a view, it would be appreciated. It's on YouTube right now. May expand to other platforms. Like I said, this is really just a thing that she and I have gotten together to do. We've been talking about it for months, and we just like, let's just go ahead and do it. So yeah,
You
link
gotta
is
start
coming up
somewhere.
here very shortly. Yeah.
That's great. I'll check that out. Any other questions? We got about 15 minutes left. Oh, I have a question for you, Matt. Going back to the Terraform testing. When you run the Terraform tests, are you able to supply a var file?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Or like at least a block of vars. I bet you there's a var file argument. Or if there isn't, it feels like there should be, but you can supply a block of vars that would then go to the planner apply step. Yeah.
Okay.
It's slick. I was able to write a bunch of those tests and have like a really fast feedback cycle on doing some major refactoring to that child module very, very quickly. Something I was like, yes, this is what I wanted Terraform testing to be, tofu testing to be. So we're going to start using it heavily. Like I'm glad that we don't need to build the build harness-esque Terra
Yeah.
test,
Yeah.
you know, harness that you have, because while it's awesome and, you know, very impressive, and you guys have been doing that for years and years, I'd much rather rely on something that's native to the language, which I think I'm just lucky that we're getting more serious about testing now that that's out, when you folks built that.
Well, yeah,
first
but
thing
no, I would
years
agree
ago.
with that. You know, if I were starting, if we were starting from scratch, we'd definitely do what you're doing. We
Yeah.
have a sunk cost investment in Terra test, but I'm most disappointed that I have to find out where we went wrong here. Like, because I was told that the testing was different between BSL and Tofu. So,
And I bet you it's something. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, because I know that there's like been drip support for, and I just don't know the versions and I can't speak to it, but like on the mocks that you create for providers, I know that that's the thing that kind of changes. So it might be that just you try and avoid that. I don't know where I would even use that. I think it's like when you really want something to be, you want a child module to be 1000% bulletproof, and you want to test that, hey, if this resource fails to get created because this provider's API didn't respond with a 200, like, how does this Terraform, you know, apply React? I don't know why you would need to do that. But I think that there's probably some devil in the details that I don't understand, that maybe one of your engineers, you know, picked up. But I think in the high level use case, it's the same.
yeah.
I'll be interested where you land with it. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Sounds like we're about out of questions, so I think I will wrap things up a little bit early and give you guys back some time today. Thanks everyone for attending office hours. We'll post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/cloudposse. It'll be there in a few hours. And then if you're interested in seeing how Cloud Posse can help at your company, go to cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet. Answer a few quick questions and you'll book a meeting with me directly. Other next steps you can take, we do syndicate our office hours as a podcast. You can go to podcast.cloudposse.com and join our Slack team if you haven't already. Slack.cloudposse.com. We have an office hours channel there. Great place to post questions or interesting things you find throughout the week, and we talk about those items on office hours. So with that said, have a great rest of your week. Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye now.
Take care.